on high quality teaching and learning. And as I just said, I'm the managing director of both TVS and TWP. I came into post around October, November time, having previously worked for TVS, but TVS then was a very different business. I'll explain just quickly what I mean by that. This is what I look like, a bald geezer who sometimes gets mistaken for Pep Guardiola. Not at the moment, because he's got a huge beard. And just very briefly, before my role with TVS and now with you guys in TWP and TVS, that's my history. Went to University of Worcester to do a PE teaching degree with qualified teacher status. Did all right, got that, and then became a PE teacher in the West Midlands, if you can tell by my dodgy accent, where I progressed from a teacher of PE to a head of boys to back in the day we used to have school sports coordinators, when sports colleges were the big thing, Labour governments for the early 2000s. That's how old I am. Then got my first role as a head of PE, then progressed on to director of PE and sports, county advisor and consultant for physical education and physical activity. I worked with healthy schools, but my main role was to drive up exam results and outcomes at GCSE and A-level in Staffordshire. I then moved from there to be an assistant principal at an academy in Wolverhampton, where I looked after the sixth form provision and vocational provision. So not trying to bore you with any of that, it's just so you know that when I talk to you in a minute about high quality PE and high quality PA, and for you guys, just some things which I look for, that's what I wanted to talk to you about this morning, I suppose. And I do want you to be able to throw stuff out on the little chats thing, which I've got on my iPad next to me, so I can talk and then try and respond as quickly as I can. Or if you've got any questions, kind of over the mic and stop me. I've got no problem with that at all. If you agree, disagree, want to provide an example of what you've done, that would be great for everybody else to listen to and share about what we believe high quality physical education and physical activity is, and what it looks like, and how we can sort of give examples of that to help each other. So I suppose me giving my history there is just to say that I've had many in Ofsted. I think around 10. I usually worked in tough schools. Usually weren't great in terms of outcomes for young people in terms of GCSE results. So we had more Ofsteds than normal schools. I've even had HMIs, which are even worse than Ofsteds. And now the sort of children and the sort of schools I used to love working in as a PE teacher, because I felt I could make a bit of a difference. So there you go. That's me. Oh, by the way, TVS, previously to working with TWP, we worked with, my dodgy picture there, of me trying to be Guardiola in his seat. We worked with football clubs, cricket clubs and rugby clubs around the country with BTEC provision. And so one of our clients, I suppose, was Manchester City. Hence me sat there trying to look all clever. So that, if you're wondering why that picture's there. And then we moved into the world of apprenticeships and got into sort of business with TWP and PEG. So that's why we're all here. So there you go. Sorry to bore you with that. I just think it's important. So what I look for in high quality, this is only my opinion. And yes, I've got bags of experience with PE and doing pre-inspection visits as a county advisor and all that sort of stuff. Ofsted changes, and Ofsted are people, and they have their own opinions. And even though they try and be factual and read from a script, it is an opinion and it is a perception, which for me is one of the key things. And just little clues and little tips. And this isn't about addressing Ofsted. This is about you trying to, you try to be the best you can be in front of young people and be the best coaches, PE teachers, aspiring PE teachers, whatever we call ourselves, activity professionals, which I do love that word, by the way. I do like it a lot. So this is just my opinion on what, if I was walking around with a clipboard and a pen, old school, and looking at the quality of your teaching, your coaching, and your input to young people, these are the things I'll be looking for. Okay. So for me, I mean, some of these are basics. I'm not trying to teach you to suck eggs. You would know this, some of you might not. Immediate engagement with your group. And we used to say in the PE world that why do we have kids lining up and waiting and having to all be organised into groups? Get them active quickly. Sort all that out whilst they're being active. So whilst you're doing the warm activity, then sort out the groups, then sort out any differentiated activities you've got. There shouldn't be any waiting around for me personally. And if we see that, and if people who are observing you guys see that, they're going to go, oh, okay, these guys know what they're doing. This is good stuff. As well, in those activities, and it's something I didn't write down, but I thought of just is no matter what age group, obviously the younger, the more difficult, but what we're actually teaching them during our little warm up or our little starter activity. Why aren't we, and you might be doing this, but some of you might not, why aren't we talking about muscles, muscle groups? If you've got year 5s and 60s, for example, like key stage 2 moving into key stage 3, why aren't we talking about muscle groups? Why aren't we talking about when we're stretching our hamstring, what muscle does that attach to? We're getting into a little bit of detail with whilst we're warming up, just as a discussion, just as a conversation whilst we're warming up, that sort of stuff. Obviously, the health and safety stuff you will know and you will do. Make sure your area is safe. It's well resourced. You've set everything up if you can prior to them coming out, and obviously no jewelry, inappropriate dress, and all that sort of stuff. I'll bore you with that, but honestly, that first impression of someone walking around and seeing this wonderfully set up sports hall, field, astroturf, if you're lucky, wherever it is you're working, whatever it is you're doing, having it all set up, resourced, little cards, little work cards, whatever it is you're doing, and the kids bang straight into activity, loads of discussion about why we're doing the stuff we're doing in terms of our warm-ups, and they are appropriately dressed and free of jewelry, as are you. Wow, that's a great start. It's a great start for me. Next thing is, obviously, we don't necessarily have to see this when Ofsted come round, or if, I don't know, if George and the team and Nick, when they come and watch you, or watch the tutors deliver, or your tutors come and watch you, whether they ask for a lesson plan. When teaching in schools, I used to use what was the 5-minute lesson plan. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago on one of Adrian's sessions on the TV, and Ofsted absolutely love it. And it's quite an old document now, as you can see, 2013. But it's a stunning little planning sheet and way just to jot down thoughts, ideas, objectives, how they all progress and flow into each other. So you've got a really fluid session. And for me, it sort of says what it does on the tin. It's a dead easy format to follow. And I would advocate using that, if you're allowed to, as your little planning sort of sheet, if you like. For me, clear objectives for your session are absolutely imperative, and you've got to make those explicit to the young people and the children in front of you. What is the point of them being there, and what are you doing for the next hour, 45 minutes, 50 minutes, however long your session is? Why are they there? What are you doing? And what I mean by smooth, fluid progress between the elements is, we spoke about the warm-up or the starter. How does that link into the main activities you're going to do? If within those main activities, you might have a whole part whole sort of a thing where you start off in a game, then you stop because you find a weakness and you bring them in, and then you talk about the different areas to improve and put them back in a game. How does it, or you might do old school sort of starter, warm-up, main activity, plenary. However your lesson is set up, however your session is set up, how does it link, and how are those transitions? How are you linking back those objectives? How are you making that really clear to your young people that you are driving for these objectives and everything you are doing is linked? And that's really important for us to see as people who come and observe PE and PA. I hope I'm not babbling on too much. If you've got any questions about what I'm saying, please jump in. Use the chat thing or just come over the mic, okay? I'll get up the teacher toolkit later on. Remind me, someone, please, just to quickly show you in case you've never seen it. Or just type into Google 5-minute lesson plan and it'll come up straight away. Right, yeah. So I've just mentioned this briefly, but progress is what us and Ofsted are looking at. What progress are the young people making? And how are you, as young activity professionals, ensuring that every single member of your group, your class, your cohort is catered for, and you're allowing them to make progress towards your objectives? Now, that sounds quite complicated, and it really isn't. So, some questions I always throw out, and these are, teachers who've trained for 4 years and now have been teaching for 2, 3, 4, 10 years. These are the questions I'd ask them, and I'd still ask you guys, whether you're an apprentice, whether you're doing your second apprenticeship, wherever you are in your journey of teaching and coaching. These are still the questions I'm going to be asking you. If you're lucky or unlucky enough to come across people like me, of just challenging you to challenge your young people, if that makes sense. So how have you differentiated your groups have you differentiated your groups? And in terms of differentiation, I know there's been sessions which Adrian's done, I think Darren's done, in terms of catering for special educational needs or additional learning needs and how we differentiate. But also, for me, high quality is how are we differentiating for our absolute superstars? If we're doing an outwitted opponents or games or even a specific sort of football or rugby, and you've got young people in your group who play for not just teams but academies, how are you differentiating and making sure that they can progress and they can learn within your session, as well as those young people who are, absolute novices and have never kicked or thrown a ball, just for example, in their lives? How are you doing that? Are your groupings well thought out? I always challenged, and I'm never saying it, just to be a know-it-all, but think about why you're doing what you're doing. There's no right or wrong answer with some of these, by the way, and I'm going to put this out to you in a minute because I want to hear your thoughts, because I'm 20 minutes in and it's just me rambling on about my thoughts and feelings of high quality PE. But why have mixed ability groups? Or why not have mixed ability groups? Why do we have to set them into ability groups and have your top group, your middle of the road, sort of okay at most things group, and then your low ability groups? Why have them like that? Because I used to see that all the time. Why not mix them all up? So I want your thoughts on this now. So I'm putting it out to you guys just for a minute, so I can take a breather and have a sip of water. When you guys are grouping and when you are looking at groupings, what are your thought processes? What do you think about a mixed ability group as opposed to set ability groups? So I have a few minutes to think about it, and then I'll have on the chat or come across on the mic, and someone be brave. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think? How do you set your groups up? And just give me some reasons why, if that's okay.
For me, it'd probably be mixed ability. So I'd try, when I try to lead a session, I'd kind of get all abilities working together.
Yep.
The reason why I do that, kind of just personally, really, it's just because if you've got higher ability working like a medium ability, then they might be able to teach them some of their skills.
Absolutely. Absolutely love that. Yeah, absolutely. I think again, for me, there's no right or wrong answer for this, but thank you. I've only got a HF on my screen, so I massively apologise. I don't even know who this is. Sorry about that, but that's a really good answer. So thank you. Yeah, I think all the research used to show that mixed ability or set ability groups, actually, as long as you've got a reason for it, there's no right or wrong. But I love having mixed ability because you're absolutely right. Having you're more able in that group to lead and help and drive on maybe a middle of the road or a less able young person, I think it's outstanding practice. And then you're actually progressing on that more able because you're giving them some leadership and you're giving them some different sort of input, which the rest of the group maybe aren't having. So then you've differentiated wonderfully. Marley's put to challenge others' ability and identify people's weaknesses because people are at different stages than others. Because if you're doing football, for example, you could have a young academy. Exactly what we're saying. Yeah, thanks, Marley. Perfect. Now, this doesn't mean, though, don't put them into ability groups, because you will find that there's times where you do need to do that in certain activities or in certain times. So, like I'm saying, I am not trying to preach to you, but just think it out. Think why you've done it. Don't just throw them into a mixed ability and go, oh, it's because really think about it, and you clearly are. So, thanks, Marley, and thanks to HF. I'm so sorry, I haven't got your full name on here. Stretch and challenge as well, which sort of fits into this, and that's my point, I suppose. It's not teaching at one specific general level or be too focused on, because sometimes we can be too focused on our low ability groups. I used to see this an awful lot in teaching, where teachers would be so worried about trying to make that gap in progress from the low ability up to the to the middle and the high ability groups, that all the focus would be on those. And not that we shouldn't focus on each group, we should. But what about these poor guys at the top who are the academy players, Marley, like you've said? What are we doing with them? How are we pushing them? How are we stretching, challenging them? And you're right, by giving them leadership sort of tasks and right, can you take that group over there? Billy, who plays for Wolves, go and take them over there, take that group, there's 6 of them, I'll watch you. Can you set up a little skill drill for them in terms of improving, I don't know, dribbling or touch or control or whatever you know what I mean? Bang, you've got it. So I won't keep labouring the point. Thank you for your input, guys. I do appreciate it. This is sort of very teachery, but I think it's very important because you guys are young teachers in my eyes. Okay. Constantly referring back to those objectives is one of the most important things where you can check progress, check learning, and make sure that they are achieving or moving towards your goal at the point of your session. Okay. So again, to put this out to you guys, how could you check progress and learning? How do you refer back to your objectives during your sessions? That's to you guys, by the way. That's not rhetorical. That is like, give me some input. What do you do?
You'd ask them questions related to your learning objectives. So if you're, say, learning a new skill, you'd kind of ask them, right, how would you use this like a match situation, or kind of link it back to how you use it.
Yeah, agreed. You know, a little bit of a Q&A is always nice. Yeah, ask them questions, ask them to show you, maybe ask them to, you know, there's many different ways we can do it. It's just making sure that we do, I think. Usually it fits better at the end of each transition, at the end of each little part where we move from one bit to another, just to check the learning for that. Callum, mainly creating a problem in the game, giving them a chance to self-discover the objectives, and then asking questions, and at the end analyze. Fantastic, yeah, brilliant, great points, guys. Thank you. You know, check back whenever you want. Check back as regular as you need to, but make sure you do. And there's no right or wrong way of doing so. So thank you for that. I think also what's really important in all this, you know, I'm focusing on sort of Ofsted speak and how you look amazing and that sort of thing. But if you making your sessions fun, enjoyable, interesting, different, you're smiling, the kids are smiling, but you're smiling as well. That's so important. And you know, the bottom bit is very obvious, but you'll be surprised how many times I used to see this myself going around, you know, fully fledged professionals who've been teaching 10 years in schools, that their appearance and attitude wasn't great in front of young people. And I'm not saying yours is or isn't. I don't know. I do intend to come out with the IQA team and the tutors to come and have a look at some stuff once all this blows over. I don't mean that lightly, but we know once COVID goes, I want to see you guys working and working with young people and input if I can. But you know, I know you've got uniforms and I'm sure you're all smart and presentable, but be positive, smile. Your enthusiasm is infectious. These young people will absolutely look up to you and love you like gods and goddesses. And I can't tell you how true that is, especially in the primary environment, especially in the primary schools where the majority of you guys go in and teach on the primary PE curriculum, where usually, not always, but usually primary schools and PE don't mix, which is why you guys are in there and why we work for, you know, a franchise in the Premier Group, because that's what we do. And your input is some of the greatest and best input these young people are going to receive that week, if not that day, if not in that year, if not in their lives. You know, I always remember back to my PE teachers, always. At primary school, I can't remember doing PE, and that's the sad thing. I'm hopeful that if you are all these things, you know, knowledgeable, confident, funny, friendly, role models, these young people will remember you when they go to high school, and they will talk about you when they go to high school about how fantastic you were, and you may have just imprinted on their brain that they want to go into a similar career that we're in, you know, which I'm well into and you guys are just starting into. So don't undersell yourselves or undervalue how important you are and how much of a role model you guys are, and how that for me is high quality. Okay, turning up hanging from the night before, you know, earrings in. I've got a beard, but it's sort of, I suppose, trimmed, if that makes sense. But being scruffy looking, I'm not saying you can't. I don't want to get into the scruffiness thing, but because some people are their own people and identities, but just be smart and professional is all I'm saying, I suppose. And I'm sure you all are. Oh, sorry, Marley. Use a session to see where they are on the first week and maybe try to. Oh, you've just Marley, you on it, mate? You've just answered the question I'm going to be putting out in a bit, and I want to talk on this more about assessment and about judging progress. So that's a fantastic point you've made there, because checking progress in a lesson is one thing. Checking progress though, and then why we deliver a scheme of work in an order we deliver it in is the next thing I want to challenge you, which might be coming up next. Actually, I'm not sure. Any issues you've faced, guys, or any problems in what I'm saying here in terms of appearance and attitude? Because I've got a skinhead with a beard, and I wouldn't say I'm covered in tattoos, but I've got tattoos. I'm not a massive bloke, but I'm a medium build bloke. Used to play football, so I look, I suppose, intimidating to some. Now, we're not here to scare, and we're not here to upset young people for sure. But my appearance sometimes has been questioned because of the way I look, and I've always batted it back, going, don't judge books by covers. So I'm not trying to put that across to you guys at all. The one head teacher I used to work for wanted tattoos covered up, wanted earrings out, and preferred me to be clean shaven. Well, that wasn't going to happen, unfortunately. But another head teacher I've worked for, a principal at my recent academy, didn't give a monkeys if you had tattoos on show or not. It was how you were in front of those young people. It was how you were, how you taught. I was, you know what I'm saying. So I'll move on. Okay, which brings me on to this little bit. I don't know how much work you have or have done yet on terms of pedagogy, which is a big posh word, but really it just means sort of classroom management behaviour and strategies you put in place to manage your classroom. Our classroom is the greatest classroom ever, folks. We're not sat behind desks. We're not reading off screens. I know you are now. Sorry about that. We're outside, or we're in a sports hall, or we're in a gym, or we're in a pool if you're lucky enough, or we're somewhere else. We have a wonderful resource. We are out in the air if we can be. So our classroom management has to be slightly different to that of an English teacher or a science teacher. And I've run faculties in schools, so I do know the difference, and I do know how gutted actually most teachers are, that especially in days like today, irrelevant to the situation going on worldwide, that usually we're outside in the sun, in the greatest classroom ever. But I don't know how much input you guys have had on sort of classroom management. I'm sure you've had some, but for me it's really simple: be firm but fair, be consistent, and set your boundaries and be human. I mean, that's it for me. Don't scare them. I'm not saying you would, but in high schools in particular, which is my bread and butter, PE teachers are looked at as the disciplined people, the people who storm around with a set of keys and a whistle and shout and scream in corridors. I hated seeing that. I had one at my high school in Stourbridge in the West Midlands, and he was a beast, and he'd scare everyone. Now, why should yeah, I'm not saying we're like that, but that's the perception of PE teachers sometimes, and I want to batter that. I hate that perception. We can be, and we should be firm, and we should be fair. And if young people dictate to us, which is my bottom point, don't let them do that. We've got high standards, we've got high expectations, because they equal high outcomes. It's really simple. So be firm, be fair. Set your rules and your boundaries. I've seen loads of different bits of practice in all the years, and whatever works for know your audience is another thing I like to say. Whatever works for one group doesn't necessarily work for another. One group you might allow to shout out because they can control themselves. Another group, if you allowed them to do that, it'd turn into a riot. So you have hands up, or you might say something else, or they might put a card up or a cone up, or they might do something to earn the right to answer a question, if that makes sense, because they're a little bit more challenging. I don't know. It's about you to think about your groups, think about who's in front of you and what works and what doesn't work. We're allowed to make mistakes with kids. We're allowed to make mistakes in our coaching. What works? Does letting them just shout out randomly work? If it does, do it then. If it doesn't, no, and it gets a bit riotous, have a bit of order, have a bit of an old school hands up thing going on. Again, I'm not trying to teach you to stuff you already know here. It's just looking for those, when I talk about high quality, knowing that it's not a sense of chaos, but it's a sense of order, and these kids know you and trust you and respect you, and you've got the same going back, is telling me your relationship with them is outstanding, therefore it's high quality. And that's the sort of points I'm getting to with all this, if that makes sense. I'm nearly done, guys, and then you can fire questions at me and do all that sort of stuff. Plenaries, okay. Back onto the sort of the flow and the whole point of your session. they were called plenaries, then they were called something else, and the PC brigade like to call it one thing, and I don't care what you call it. The end of your session, how do you bring it all together then? And again, we've had people tell us, we've had Callum Marley and the other young man. I need to find out this guy's name. Hang on 2 seconds. Who is Harry? Sorry, Harry. Got you. There we go. I do apologise, mate. And Harry's point as well of Q&A. Q&A is a very common one. It's something we like to do, and there's nothing wrong with it at all, because as long as it brings together, the whole purpose of your session, then that's great, isn't it? But it's just asking questions. How are you asking questions? Is it a case of picking on the same person, or do you ask a group of people, or do you, so one of the things I want you to now tell me again is, how would you bring a session all together? Give me an example of your good quality, high quality practice of a plenary. So Q&A is great. How have you made it high quality though? Or have you done something else? Is there something else you can share with everybody else? And Marley, I am going to come to your second point in a minute about assessment, which is what you've just done there. So that's slightly different, which is the bottom point on this slide. But to you guys again, give me some examples of outstanding plenaries or ends, or So please talk to me now. Please talk to me about how you're going to bring this all together. Anyone? Harry again? Go on then, Harry. Okay, yeah, ask the group what they think they did well and how they can improve for the next lesson. That's great. What would you ask your high ability academy boys or girls a different set of questions to your middle or low ability? Would you do Q&A, or would you get them to show there? Thank you. Tell me, show me what they think the next progressions could be. Love that. Thanks, Callum. Dominic, getting as many of the children involved in asking and answering each other's questions. Love that. Love that. Do some peer questions. Absolutely. Get them to ask each other. That's a lovely bit of work. And if that can be developed over a period of time, so it becomes a natural thing for these young people to do, my God, when people come and watch you, they're going to go, who is this? Who is this young coach? They're outstanding. It's not a case of just, I'll ask a couple of questions and usually the clever kids will answer and then that looks okay because it looks like we've all learned something. You've also got to, you've almost got to prove that every single young person has progressed and made some progress in that session. And that's one of the most difficult things. It really is. And it sounds like you've got great ideas and great thought processes on this. So please, those people who can't see the chat screen, have a look at what other people are putting. And input as well. Write some stuff on here, guys, because I've got, 3 or 4 people. I hope there's more people than that listening to me, and you haven't all switched off by now. So that's some great examples. Thank you. Now, the big question for me at the bottom, and I know we've tried to answer this just, is how do you know they've made progress? Now, I don't mean like in that one lesson or that one session you're doing. It's sort of, I'm struggling to try and explain it. Let me flick on the next slide, because it's a question I used to ask to heads of departments and senior leaders in the PE world, even AFP. I did a big thing with AFP on assessment with a colleague of mine called Andy Fratwell, who taught me at university, and we did a lot of work together on it. And this is the sort of work we were looking at. And I thought it'd be great actually to ask you some of the same questions I'd be asking heads of department, directors of sport and assistant principals. All right, because you are at the cutting edge in terms of delivering day in, day out. All right, granted, not at the moment, but day in, day out in primary schools. So 2 scenarios, 2 questions I want you to reflect on. You've probably read them by the time I've rabbled on anyway. I used to see all the time, and I've done this at year 6 because I know most of you guys are in primary schools, but I used to see it at year 7, year 8 as well. A football scheme, I call them schemes of learning. So an SOL is a scheme of learning, you might call it a scheme of work, same thing. Always 6 weeks long, which used to puzzle me, like the magic number. And and I'd see week 1 passing, week 2 control, week 3 shooting, week 4 dribbling. Okay, so as I used to ask them, I'm going to ask you, what is wrong, if anything, with a scheme of learning or scheme of work design, which is that sort of that format? What do you think? Do you think that that's okay? Do you think that that's absolutely fine and that's what you actually work from? Or do you think that there's something maybe not quite right with that? I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this, like properly, because this is now getting into thought processes, pedagogy, and why we do the things we do with our young people. Okay? So this is getting to the sort of the crux of it all now, and the whole point of high quality. So what are your thoughts? Doesn't give you space to teach specific areas that need attention and improvement. Okay, Cameron, like that. How have you identified, though, those specific areas that need attention and improvement? What have you done? Have you done anything? I agree with you. It's very sort of old school. It's very, okay, only in week 1 are we allowed to do passing. Okay. And that's just an example, you know, it could be set up in any other way. If there's a lower achiever, they may switch off a little if they can't do a skill. So we need to give them a range of skills to keep the children engaged. Thanks, Dominic. I tend to mix them up sometimes because they all link up, but you need to strengthen weaknesses of others. Sorry, can you repeat the question? Yeah, so, sorry, Callum. Thanks, Marley, Dominic, and Cameron, for your input. I agree with everything you're saying. The question is there anything wrong, Callum, with that sort of setup of a scheme of learning or scheme of work where each week you're given a topic, and so that's the only thing you're allowed to do in that week? What do you think? Do you think there's anything wrong with that, or do you think that's fine? Is what I'm asking. And if you look at some of the things people are putting, they are pretty much putting that it's a little limited, I think is the word I'm looking at. Starting the scheme work with a wide range of skills used within a sport to begin. Thank you, Cameron. You're getting where I'm absolutely going towards there. Mixing and linking them will keep the attention and engagement. Yes, it will. It teaches the skills, but has no relation to how you would use them, why do you need them, why are they important. Yeah. Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. Also, to add an end goal, such children love, of course they do. And I did a whole bit of work at university actually on learning through games. It was an amazing bit of. So I just got a phone call. So amazing bit of work actually to look at that, because I was taught a very different way to teach at university as I would now advocate doing now, if that makes sense. It's not about the children in front of you, it's about the scheme of work. We need to think about who's in front of us. Well, perfect, Ben. Absolutely you do. Being technically good doesn't need to be skillful. Agreed. Set targets in each session for kids to reach for. Right. So I'll stop you there, because you're all getting towards the right sort of. For me, this is my opinion. Sorry, I'm not trying to preach. This isn't gospel truth. This is my opinion. Who said it? Hang on. Ben W. Thank you, Ben. And I think it was Callum or Cameron who said it earlier on and answered the question earlier on for me. It is about the young people. It's not about someone who's decided to sit down and write a 6-week-long scheme of learning, presuming that in week 1 nobody can pass a ball, then presuming in week 2 no one can control a ball, presuming in week 3 no one can shoot. And I've used football because football's my background in terms of personal sort of preference and playing and stuff, but it could be for anything. You know, if we look at gymnastics, it could be that week 1 you've got set in your scheme of learning traveling and different ways of traveling, you know, and then week 2 starting to then use apparatus, so you've got different levels within your gymnastics of traveling around a room. What if you've got in gymnastics, you know, 5 or 6 young people in that room who are club gymnasts and represent counties in England? Why would you do? What if you've got academy players who can ping 60-yard diagonals with the outside of their right foot? Why would you do 5-yard passing drills with them? Do you understand where I'm coming from with this? So a lot of you are getting it. A lot of you are thinking, all right, yes, a scheme of work with a wide range of schools within a sport, but somebody said earlier, almost like, and your game-based drills, which are massively important. For me, week 1 is, if you're doing if you want to be specific and do football, or you might want to just call it invasion games, you know, and in the first week, do with a ball at your feet, then the second week a ball with a stick, and then the third week a ball in your hand. However you want to do it. In that first week, for me, why aren't we assessing the ability of those young people to pass across the floor, pass with their hands, catch, move, control, move into space maybe? Do they know how to defend? Do they know what, defending in netball looks like in terms of being goal side compared to football? And what are the similarities and what are the comparisons between different sports and different games? And, this wider concepts of sport rather than, these specific. But if you want to do a specific football thing, again, why aren't we looking at specifically what our group can and can't do? Why are we just going out there and going, right, week one, we're going to teach passing, and my academy kids, oh God, I didn't realise I had a couple of them in here. Right, we'll extend their distance, their passing, and it can be on their weaker foot, which is great, and it's differentiating, and it's thinking on your feet, and I get that, but that's just good quality for me. High quality, outstanding is, right, we're not going to do passing this week because actually my group can all pass, because they've shown me that in the little game I've set up, where not only with the ball in the hands, they can also do it on the floor. So I ain't doing passing, and whoever's written this scheme of learning, I'm going to have a professional dialogue with them and say, right, can we think about how we write our schemes of work, how we write our schemes of learning? And if that's down to me at TWP to change people who write stuff, then that's what we will do with George and Nick and Neil and David and our tutor team. We will change the way we look at things over time. But I want you to get in the thought process of why are you doing what you're doing, and is it the right thing to be doing, if that makes sense. And this is where I do get a little bit passionate, and I do get a little bit on my soapbox about, because I used to get sick of seeing this sort of stuff in schools. And these are with, like I've said before, teachers who've been at university for 3 years and then done a 1 year PGCE, or 4 years as a 4-year degree like I did mine in teaching. And the pedagogy and the thought process behind it just isn't there for me. So for me, what I'm saying is really think about how your sessions with your group are set up. And some of you are thinking about it already, which honestly, I'm not blowing smoke rings, is absolutely stunning to see for you youngsters starting on your journey. And I don't mean to be patronising with that, but it's brilliant, honestly. So thank you for those inputs, because that's exactly what I want to hear. It's exactly what I want to see. And others who are not getting involved and are just listening, make your own minds up about what you believe and what you think should happen. I'm not here to tell you what to do per se. I'm just here to advise on what I think people look for and what I certainly look for in high quality. Well, I'll stop rambling on about that. Next one is, this is like an assessment thing, which is a lot of work I used to do with AFP and with high schools. And this is a very difficult thing to answer and a very difficult concept to sort of talk about. George, just very quickly, have I only got 45 minutes?
Yes.
So I've got 5 minutes left, yeah?
You'll be fine to overrun a little bit.
No, it's okay. I'm nearly there. I'm just double checking. It's almost like a well-oiled machine, almost. Just checking, mate. Thank you. Right, so with this, again, this is thinking about how we assess and how we judge progress and how we judge young people on what they can and can't do. Now, back in the day, and I don't want to bore you too much, when I first qualified, there was a 4-stranded curriculum. All right, and I don't want to bore you too much, but very quickly, the first strand we used to have to assess against was acquire and develop, which means can teach a new skill and then develop that skill so they become semi-competent and then competent at it. And the next strand was then select and apply. So of all the different skills you've then taught the young people, could they then select and apply the right skill at the right situation, such as in a game situation, for example, when to pass, when to shoot, when to dribble, in basketball or in football or whatever. Then there is the ability to evaluate and improve each other and themselves. And then I've forgotten the 4th strand. Oh, my God. I only did it all my life. Oh, yes, of course. And then sort of the health and fitness and the reasons why we do it in terms of, the health and fitness benefits of anything we do. So that was our 4-stranded curriculum. Then it changed to a 5-stranded one, which was all of those 4 plus a mental capacity one. So were we mentally capable to continue and strive to learn and to get better at the stuff we weren't so good at? Okay. And this was the PE curriculum of the 2000s up until around 2012, when the curriculum all changed and it went to whatever we want to do now, which is great and not so great in a way. Now, how we used to assess was, and this is why I used to question people, if you've got sort of your I don't want to generalise, and I hate generalising, but I'm going to have to try and make this example as best I can. Somebody of a, and I want to say like a Wayne Rooney-esque type guy or girl, incredibly gifted, but I would question whether or not there's any self-reflection, whether they know and can demonstrate health and fitness benefits, and how to improve themselves and have a strop if they lose. But skill acquisition and development, so 2 out of those sort of 4 or 2 out of those 5, they're absolutely outstanding at, play for England, top scorer for Man United in England. All right, it's a bit of a generalisation. I'm just trying to make it real and fit somebody into that. All right, would they be a high achiever or a low achiever then? Because they can do 2 out of 5 things for me. And then you've got the Jose Mourinho's of the world. Everything's football, sorry guys. The Jose Mourinho's of the world, who possibly hasn't got that skill acquisition and development and then application in competitive situations to the level of some of these people. But my God, can they self-reflect? Can they explain and demonstrate health and fitness benefits? And my word, can they improve teams, players? Yes, he has a strop, but mentally capacity, he's a winner. So he's got 3 out of those 5 compared to Wayne Rooney's 2 out of those 5. Who's the higher achiever? Who's the lower achiever? Should we be comparing them? So this was the sort of questions I'd have with people. So again, I wasn't going to put that out there because I'm nearly out of time, but 2, because I may have just confused you. But this is something again, in terms of thought processes and why we do what we do, have a think about as well when you're observing and you're assessing young people and whether or not they are good or not good at something. For me, don't just look at that skill part of things. Can they self-reflect? Can they develop others? They might not be the best with the ball at the feet, but they might be able to watch those people who can do it with the ball at the feet and go, oh, that technique wasn't quite right, or they aren't in the right position in a game situation. They should be goal side, and become those coaches, or take warm-ups or take cool-downs, that sort of stuff. That's what I'm trying to get to. So everyone has their place. Sorry to ramble on. Right, last page, promise. For me, what I've just talked about there, be reflective. It's very difficult for us to be reflective. No one hates criticism. No one hates being told that wasn't quite good enough. It's horrible. It hurts. And we get a little bit defensive, or we can be. And it's about learning not to. And it's about learning to go, do you know what? I'm not the expert. I'm still not the expert. 41 tomorrow, by the way. So I expect some presence of some description from all of you. I still ain't the expert. There's still things when I teach, I go, no, I wasn't happy with that. At the end of this one today, I'm going to be sitting there talking to my wife, who's also a head teacher, and going, I just talked for England today. It was crap. I'm not happy. I want it more interactive if I'm going to do another one. I want to involve the people who are listening more if I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to reflect on this. Be open to change and developing practice. You're working with other people within your franchises, but also across the country. So things like TWP-TV, where I can see a chat thing going on and people are swapping and sharing ideas. That's amazing. Amazing. And if you can watch your peers, and we can do a check and challenge, and we can talk about it, and have what we used to call in schools an open door classroom sort of policy, where anyone could walk in and watch us teach. I didn't care who it was. Come on, watch me teach. I'm confident. And it's about you guys having that as well. And then these people coming in, whatever opinion they've got, professional dialogue, accept it, listen to it. It's what they think. It's what they've seen. And again, I've been harping on about it for 40 minutes. Why are you teaching and delivering the way you are? What processes have got you to that point? And are all your children accessing it, and are they making the required progress? Lots of things here, guys and girls, to think about. And this is all I wanted it to be, was sort of a teaser and a thought process, and what do you think, and why do you think the way you think? All right. Thank you hugely for listening. I'm sorry if I've rumbled on. I'm so passionate about this. I could talk for hours and hours, as I'm sure you are aware after 45 minutes of this. Anything you want to ask me now, I'm sure George will cut us off when he needs to cut us off. I'm 1 minute over, so I'm sorry. But anything you want to ask, any questions you've got, then ask now. Or my email address is dwood@trainwithpremier.com. Or dale.wood@tvseducation.com. So either one. And just ask questions. Just because I've got an MD next to my name, it doesn't mean I'm not human, and I won't speak to you guys. Don't be ridiculous. All right. Any questions you've got, any problems you've got outstanding tutors, IQAs, and then you've got us lot as well. So talk to us, ask us questions. Floor's yours. Thank you very much for listening. Speak to you all soon.